The following production is brought to you by the Talkin' Buds Leaf Show.
This is the Talkin' Buds Leaf Show. How's it going, everybody? I'm Rob. He's Ryan. This is the Talkin' Buds Leaf Show. We're a Leaf podcast. Everybody knows this. We just watched the Toronto Blue Jays puke all over themselves in 2 straight games against the Minnesota Twins to get eliminated from the American League wild card. And I thought this would be a good time. There's Leaf storylines in training camp right now, and we're going to get to those in this episode. But I thought this would be a good time to have a discussion that I've always wanted to have on this podcast. And it's kind of just the state and the life of being a Toronto sports fan. Your thoughts for just a few minutes. Quickly give us your thoughts on the Blue Jays being swept in 2 games by the Minnesota Twins.
Well, do you want to talk about what happened in the game, or do you want to talk about just kind of the overall general?
Just quickly give us. Yeah, you're a big Jays guy. We're both big Jays guys, but you're the baseball guy here. So just quickly, Cole's notes, your thoughts on this loss to the Minnesota Twins.
All right. At the end of the day, this team couldn't hit all year. They couldn't get a clutch hit all season. They go into the series. They couldn't get a clutch hit. So really, why is anybody surprised? They couldn't get hits all year. Why would they all of a sudden get hits in the playoffs? A lot of missed opportunities. And then, but the most disappointing part of all of it is the decision making, the bad errors on the base pass, like just all the stupid, lazy kind of house league baseball type of play. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. does the impossible, getting picked off at second base with a runner in front of him in a full count. Anyone knows baseball, you know that 3-2, a full count with 2 out, you're running as soon as the pitcher picks up his leg. So technically, you really don't even need to take a lead off. You can stand on the bag almost, and as soon as he lifts his leg, you can start running. This guy's just out to lunch at second. That was the worst play I have ever seen in all my years of watching baseball. Just garbage.
And then there's a decision by John Schneider to remove Jose Barrios while he's dealing after 47 pitches and repeating the same mistake he made last year with Kevin Gausman. But you brought up Vladdy, and I think that's a good way to transition into the conversation that I want to have. And it's just, I've sat here through these 2 baseball games, and I've thought to myself, how many times in my years of being a Toronto sports fan have I sat on this couch just so disappointed in what I'm seeing in a huge playoff postseason game. And every year when they make it, whether it be the Leafs, whether it be the Blue Jays, the Raptors, which the Raptors are a whole other sidebar. I'll talk about them in a second. You sit and you're excited. You're like, okay, it's playoff time. This is our young core group of guys that we've decided to build our franchise around. And now we're getting into the games that matter. And there's a lot of similarities between the Leafs and the Blue Jays. Young superstar cores that in these high pressure moments and these high pressure games really struggle to perform. And like, what makes the great players great is you rise to the occasion in these big high pressure moments. And it just feels like these 2 teams are in a similar type thing where they have these young guys who have had great regular seasons and have established themselves as elite players in their respective sports. But when it comes time to actually knuckle down in the big playoff moments, when the lights get bright, they cannot execute and cannot perform to the level we all hope they can.
Well, they're 0-6 in their wild card in the Vladdy Bo era. They are 0-6. They lost 2 games in the bubble. They lost last year, and then now it's another 2-game sweep. So now they are 0-6 in playoff baseball. So that's just like, I mean, the Leafs made it to Game 7 at least, but in terms of just like not winning when you need to win, it's the parallels are pretty apparent.
Yeah, like, do you understand what I'm saying? When it's like, the pain feels similar. I know the Blue Jays are quote unquote swept, although a 2-game series is different than losing like in a 4 of 7. But do you understand what I'm saying? It's like it's a similar feeling. It's like you've got Matthews and Marner, you've got Vladdy and Bo, and it's just
it's two teams that did it the right way. They did the rebuild. They got their prospects, and then when you get these guys, look what the Orioles are doing right now. When you finally get these guys, you're supposed to turn a corner, and both these franchises are similar, like you said, in the sense that they got their guys when they were young. You had hope that this is kind of the players they would need to go on some sort of a run and get to those World Series or DSs or ALCSs, and it isn't happening. They're not having any sort of playoff success. They're actually kind of, in Vladdy's case, they're just tailing off in general in terms of production. In terms of teams rebuilding and having hope to finally get to the big time, they've both of them have fallen short in that sense.
I brought up the Raptors earlier, and when you think of some of these losses that we've sat through, like the Jays have gotten swept in the wild card series 3 of the last 4 years. The Leafs, you go back to like you could talk about the back-to-back losses to the Bruins, but I think at that point in time they were still like a young team, and those don't feel as painful. You could go all the way back to the 2013 4-1 loss, the blowing the 3-1 series lead to the Habs.
You could even go back to the Sundin era where they had the Carolina Hurricanes in an Eastern Conference final and they blew it.
Yeah.
They played the Sabres in the Eastern Conference final and they blew it.
And I've sat like losing to Tampa 2 years ago, beating Tampa last year, but then really petering out and looking pathetic against the Florida Panthers. The more I think about it, the more I think that there needs to be a massive monumental, like building size statue of Kawhi Leonard erected at City Hall, because it really puts into perspective like what that guy, and obviously there was tons of other great players on that team, Kyle Lowry notwithstanding, but what that guy was able to do in carrying that team to an NBA championship. It's like, I'm 35, and in my lifetime, the Blue Jays won 2 World Series. I was alive for that, but I don't remember them. I was like 4 years old.
Yeah. I mean,
5 years old. You weren't even alive for those.
No.
The only Toronto sports championship that you have seen in your lifetime is the 2019 Toronto Raptors. That is crazy. Think about that.
Yeah.
And think about that in comparison to like a city like Boston. Like if you were 28-year-old Ryan Furnish and you lived in Boston, Massachusetts, you would have seen Patriots championships, Red Sox World Series, Bruins Stanley Cups, and Celtics finals appearances.
Actually, think about it, the Bruins only have 1 Stanley Cup.
Right, but they've been they've made a couple finals appearances.
They lost 2 finals in that whole era. But yeah, they've only won. Yeah, I know what you're saying. I don't know, man. It's just, I mean, I think every city that has a bunch of franchises, other than Boston, like how do Buffalo fans feel? Like about the biggest loser city of all time. Think about before Chicago kind of turned it around in the early 2000s, like the Cubs finally won a World Series, the Blackhawks went on their run, but before that, they didn't win shit. So it's like, I feel like every city that kind of goes through hard times in terms of franchises not having success or just have the ability to just choke away playoff series and important games, it's challenging. And when you watch this game too that they just lost, like just the amount of bonehead plays that they made during this game was just, that was concerning. It's not like they got beat by a better team. It's a guy literally getting picked off at second base in an impossible way to get out. Just, it is impossible to get picked off at second base. There is less than a 0.5% chance that should ever happen. And he blows it. And he blows it. And then you got the manager, Galaxy Brain, or the whole management team has as we as I don't know if I want to blame the manager, but it's galaxy braining a pitching decision. It's just
I want to be careful with this next point I want to make, because if there was ever a rant or a discussion where you could get radioed, it's this one, where someone will take. People are going to interpret this in tons of different ways, and they're going to disagree with me, and they're going to call me an idiot or whatever. But the Blue Jays as an organization are in a similar spot now that the Maple Leafs have been in the past, where their fan base now is banging the table going, we must see change. There must be change. You have to trade a core piece to redo the DNA of your team. Like, it's a very similar situation that they're in. And I drew a comparison between the core players a few minutes ago. I feel like in this city, do you think in this city as a fan base, I feel like these guys come in here, I don't see any dog in these guys. I don't see any fight in these guys. I don't see anyone in there like it's just, oh, well, we went out there and we tried and we didn't get it done, and it's like, do you think these young players come in, and I think we as a city and as a collective sports fan base shower such adulation on these young players in different sports that they almost it's like they're crowned as kings of the city before they've even done anything.
Especially with the insecurity that this city has in terms of not having superstar players.
Exactly. But I also think that, there's another side of this coin, which is these teams, the Leafs and Blue Jays, they're good enough to qualify for the postseason. There is a world in which they're dog shit and they don't even make the playoffs. So you're grateful to have these good young players because you're like, oh, you guys achieve a lot of regular season success. The Blue Jays had a tough season, but they still made the playoffs. So we're so happy to have you that I just don't. This is a really long-winded way of trying to convey that, like, I don't see dog in these guys. I don't see fight in these guys. I don't see a Sidney Crosby in these guys. Like, I don't see even like what you see in Connor McDavid, like,
or even just like Jose Bautista. Had the ability to hit that big home run. Edwin Encarnacion had the ability to hit that big.
Josh Donaldson when he was here.
Like, they didn't get it done in the end, but like at least they showed some ability to like rise up and make a play.
There's a similar personality trait. Like when Vladimir Guerrero Jr. got picked off at second base tonight, you made a great point where you were like, that is proof right there that this guy's head is not where it should be. And I'm not saying that that's all of them in every single playoff loss they've ever had. But I am saying, like, I don't see a zealot. I don't see someone who's like, you are going to have to kill me to beat me. It's the old Shoresy line. They don't hate to lose. Like, I'm drawing a parallel line between these core players on these two teams, and I'm basically speculating. Is it a city thing? Do you think it's as a city and a fan base, we just shower these guys with such adulation and like, thank God you're here, that it kind of in the end, it's like, why do I need to win? I'm getting paid a ton of money and I'm the king of the city.
Yeah, no, I think it's just honestly been the luck of the draw in terms of the personalities they got. I mean, you look at superstars in other cities, like when did Tom Brady ever sit back and anyone in Boston would have gone on their hands and knees and prayed to this guy because he was just that big of a god there. But guess what? He still showed up every day in the film room, worked his ass off. Like McDavid is same thing. I'm sure in Edmonton, he's treated bigger than a god and he still works his ass off. He still wants more. It's just kind of the luck of the draw with the personalities they've got. But I think you mentioned in a point there a minute or two ago about like these two teams could be dog shit and they could not be competitive at all, which for a while that was the case.
Yeah.
And I think this is just my take. I don't know if this sounds stupid or not, but this is just how I feel. I think I would way rather the Blue Jays be just I can swallow a Blue Jays L a lot easier than I can swallow a Leafs L. I just think them staying competitive and being in the playoff picture is big for that franchise in this city, just because it's an American sport, and they were so bad for so long. They didn't make the playoffs for 22 years. The franchise was completely irrelevant. And I think the Leafs kind of have the unfair pressure of being the biggest market in the league. So it's like the expectation for the Leafs, whether it's fair or not, to me, are a lot higher in terms of wanting a Stanley Cup, also because of the drought. And with the Jays, I find, like, obviously watching them lose sucks, and it's very irritating the way they lost. But I think it's more important for that franchise to stay relevant in a playoff picture year over year than it is for the Leafs. And I think they get more of a free pass.
That's a really good point. And so basically what you're saying is it's not apples to apples, and I agree with that. One thing that I do want to dispel before we move on from this Toronto sports discussion is that it kind of piggybacking off the rant I just went on, is that this is a tough market to play in. It's not. It's
not for a baseball player.
And not for a hockey player. I'm sorry. Like, sure, they have moments where at the end of the season we're all pissed, and yes, you have idiots who are attacking Mitch Marner on social media when he won't sign, when he's in a contract dispute with the Leafs, and those people are morons and whatever. But when you're like the city, like the New York Yankees are not going to be as dog shit next year as they were this year, because the city just simply will not accept it.
No.
Like they will not accept it. And I don't, like, you've seen the Kyle Dubas era walking it back and walking it back and walking it back, and excuses and excuses and excuses. And the Leafs have basically done that same thing again. We're just not sitting here pounding the table about it because it's Brad Treliving who's here instead of Kyle Dubas. And guess what? If the Blue Jays fire Ross Atkins and walk back Vladdy and Bo, we'll all be sitting here going, yay, because it'll be Ross Atkins that takes the bullet.
Yeah.
So I don't think as a player, I don't think this is a very tough market to play in. I think it's the opposite. I think if you show up here and it's the John McDonald effect. If you show up here and you show a modicum of effort and a modicum of drive and a will to win and succeed, like, I can tell you right now from what I've seen in the preseason games thus far, Max Domi, number 11 Domi jerseys are going to be flying off the Real Sports shelves this year, because this guy goes out there and he plays hard, and that's all you need to be a fan favorite in this city.
I mean, we could write a list of like 30 names of guys who fit that bill. Darcy Tucker, Max's dad, like,
yeah,
John McDonald,
yeah,
like, just guys who come in and show a work ethic often do get loved by everybody in this city. I just I don't know. I don't think it's tough to be a Blue Jay here. I think the media circle for baseball in this city is just so small. It's owned by one company. It's not like, it's just, I don't think it's hard to be a Blue Jay. And for the Leafs, those guys, like, they need to, like, those guys, for me, they just need to play better. Like, just, if you don't want criticism, just play. Like, you guys got to show up in big moments. Like, we've had enough. Like, even I'm kind of sick of being nice to them, because I just think they need to finally show up in big moments. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is a big market, and people perceive it different in terms of how tough it is to play in.
All right, let's move on and talk about some Maple Leaf stuff. We 18 minutes of just the Toronto sports. I've always wanted to have that type of discussion on this pod, and it's just, there's never been a good opportune moment to. And I just felt, we're in the final days of Leaf camp, and we just watched the Blue Jays, like I said, puke all over themselves. So I thought now would be a good time. Moving on, though, I wanted to just discuss a little bit the Monday night preseason game against the Montreal Canadiens, which featured essentially a regular season lineup.
I don't even know if I want to talk about that. I don't know if I want my, like, real takes to come. I don't want an overreactionary take from me over that game.
So you're not. So when it comes to that, you're not taking, because there were definitely things about that game that I didn't love, but also, like, it's preseason, so I'm not going to get too rattled about it. Here, I'll give you my takes first, okay? There's a segment of the fan base I'm finding on social media who is really going after Tyler Bertuzzi and is saying he's not good enough to play on that top line. Like, go back to your room and worship your Kyle Dubas poster on your wall. Like, that is an absolutely ridiculous take. So can we just like chill on that? It's preseason.
I mean, I will say that the jury is out on that, though. Like, I'm not saying I think he has all the talent in the world to do so, but I haven't seen him play any regular season games yet. So I'm not, even though I'm not with those people fully, I'm also not ready to just absolutely pencil him in as the best winger they've ever had on that line.
No, but at this point in time, I do think he's the best. He's the most elite option they have. So a couple things. One, I didn't think Ilya Samsonov looked that great. Now it's so hard to say that because it's preseason, but it's just there was a couple goals that he let in that I thought were a bit sus. And last year he had a career season, and I worry about him regressing this year, which is why I think the pickup of Martin Jones and the development of Joe Wall is so important for this team. I mean, we can talk about the defense, but like everyone is talking about the defense. It's no secret now that the defense is not good enough. It's not up to snuff. They know that. We know that. They're going to have to start the season with it. Hopefully you can get away with it in early regular season. But if obviously, as everyone has said a million times, if you expect to go into the postseason with that defense core, it's not going to go well. Thirdly, love Max Domi. Don't love the pairing of him and William Nylander. If you're going to have William Nylander playing center because you need someone to be defensively responsible. I know Nick Robertson was on that line and he's a rookie and theoretically it'll be Calle Yarncroc that's there, but don't love those two as a pairing just because I think that's a line that I think will be exciting to watch in certain times, but I also think that's a line that has a risk of getting scored on quite a bit. And I'm not going to go after the big boys for preseason performance as a whole, okay? But we start 3-on-3 overtime.
They're terrible.
Something that they were really, really bad at.
Garbage at 3-on-3 for 2 years.
Yes, something that they've been really bad at. And it's Matthews and Marner out there again looking absolutely clueless, and they get scored on immediately. So I hope Sheldon is taking that away, and that's something they're working on in practice because those are my main takes out of that game that featured basically the main roster.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it is a preseason game, but it's just like, I don't know. I just had 2 words for that game. If I had to evaluate it, someone's like, what did you think about them watching that game? And I only had 2 words: not impressed. I was not impressed at all. Not that it's a big deal. I know it's preseason. I know they still have a long way to go. I know the regular season starts, but guess who they're playing in the first game of the regular season? The same AHL team that they just blew a lead to and lost to in overtime. And the greatest Maple Leaf opponent of all time, you could
Anderson.
Ice Josh Anderson and a bunch of AAA kids who are 14 years old and somehow find a way to come out on top. So I just wasn't very impressed. I know it's preseason, but I've also seen that game in the first game of the season for several years as well. It seems like they always kind of go into that first game and struggle. And anytime they play the Habs or the Sens, it feels like they just always have that ability to just like blow a lead. And it's just, I know it means nothing, but if you're like a Leaf hater, it is kind of like a laughable moment where it's like you couldn't even hold a lead and beat the AHL Canadians, which if that's their starting lineup, it's their starting lineup, but it's still an AHL team to me. They're terrible. So it's like, here's our full lineup playing for the first time. It's supposed to be all high and mighty, and they somehow, even in the preseason, find a way to blow a lead and look like idiots in overtime.
You did predict a OT loss to start the season last week.
That was the exact game I was talking about. Like, maybe they got out of their system early, hopefully, but like that game is the exact game I was talking about because I've seen that. How many times have we seen that happen? Like 1,000 times.
A lot.
I'm almost numb to it. I know, and trust me, everyone who's listening, I know it's the preseason. I'm not freaking out, but like you can kind of look at yourself, and it is kind of laughable how they just even if it's preseason, they still just kind of found a way to blow another lead against the Montreal Canadiens.
They got to get the 3-on-3 overtime sorted out. Like there's no doubt about that. They got to get that sorted out. They've struggled with that for, you're right, 2 years now.
I'm very impressed with Matthew Nyes.
Good. I wanted to bring him up next.
Yeah, over the past, that's the one guy I will say this has been a great preseason for, is him. He's
played. The guy's played every night.
Game, yeah. And that's probably why. Maybe that's why he sticks out, because it seems like every game you watch, he's right in the middle of it. He's always kind of on one of those top lines. But we've covered that he's not the fastest skater in the world. But guess what? It doesn't matter. Because that guy's offensive instincts are proving to be very, very elite, and just. Yeah, he's just a good hockey player. He's going to be a big factor for them. Hopefully, he can stay healthy all year, because my new motto in sports is I hate guys who aren't healthy. Like, if you're not healthy, you're useless to me. And hopefully, he can stay healthy. But yeah, he's been really noticeable. He's been really good, and it's very exciting what he could potentially do for this hockey team.
Another guy that they're quite excited by is Fraser Minten. They're in Gravenhurst right now doing a team getaway. What do you think? What do you think they do at a team getaway? What do you think is going on? They're up in cottage country.
They all brought their PS5s.
Oh, so you think they're all just going to their rooms and getting on and playing?
Maybe some guys will go out and.
I don't think John Tavares is playing PS5.
No, I think John kind of does his own thing.
John's got his cottage up there. I bet you he's just leaving after camp and going to his cottage.
A bunch of them have a cottage up there. So.
Yeah, so maybe some of them are staying at the cottage, because I was like, when they said team bonding, I was like, I wonder what they do at team bonding. Gravenhurst. I mean, it's October and it feels like it's the middle of July, so they could be out in the water.
Well, not anymore. As this podcast drops, I'm pretty sure the temperature is also supposed to drop.
Okay, well, there you go. Temperature is also supposed to drop. Anyways, the reason why I brought that up is because at practice, they had William Nylander moved over to the wing, and everyone was like, oh, look at that. Didn't even get through camp, and he's already back on the wing. But then after, because naturally, they all go up to Sheldon Keefe and say, I thought you said William Nylander was a centerman. And Sheldon Keefe said, he still is a centerman. However, we wanted to give young Fraser Minten a look down the middle, and said that he believes Fraser Minten has a legitimate shot to make the team.
Yeah, but that just shows you that they're begging for someone to have him not be a center.
Yes.
So in turn, they don't want him to be a center. It's just they are.
He's not a center. Like,
no, he's not.
I want to talk about Fraser Minten here, so I don't want to. I don't want to go off.
Center for 3 weeks. That's all we've been talking about. This isn't going to work. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, he's not. He doesn't have the defensive 200-foot mentality.
Let the guy skate up down his wing, get another 40 Genos.
I've said the guy that I've compared
200-foot game here. What are we doing?
I said this last week. I said, look at what's happening. This is going to happen every episode this year, folks. We're going to be talking I want to talk about Fraser Minten, and boom, William Nylander, and where's he playing, and how much is he getting paid, and blah, blah, blah. Get used to that. That's going to happen all year. I've compared William Nylander to being a better version of Phil Kessel in the past, because that's what he is. He's a scoring winger.
Yeah, I think he's a little bit better than Phil. Like in terms of,
but that's the type of player he is.
Yeah, I think he's a little bit more dynamic in terms of making an impact, especially in the neutral zone. Like Phil was just really good at going on a rush and making a pass and having a really good shot. I think Willie is actually one of the best puck carriers we've seen maybe ever on this team. But it's just the problem with Nylander was he's received a lot of hate, including from me in his first couple seasons. That's because of the perceived lack of effort, or what I saw as actual lack of effort. But having him playing center, what do you want this guy to do? Be a 200-foot dog? That's not what he is. Obviously when he's playing wing and he's being lazy, you want him to come back and make some defensive plays, but to play center and play that defensively responsible role all the time. And I know he kind of grew up playing center, but it's easy to play center when you're dummying kids in Sweden. Since he's been a pro, he's been a winger, man. He's getting better every single year in the wing position. So it's what are we doing here? Are we that afraid of giving Fraser Minten a shot or having Pontus play center that we're gonna force a 40 goal scorer who's played wing to play a 200-foot game all game long?
Well, I think they're desperately trying to find someone, right, to fill that third center mid role.
If they're considering Fraser Minten, then they obviously do not want this guy to play center at all.
But in fairness, Fraser Minten has looked really good, and we
it's no knock on Fraser Minten.
I'm
not knocking Fraser Minten at all.
We talked about him when we had Nick Richard on last season, and he brought when I said to him I asked Nick at the time, I said, who is a Leaf prospect not named Matthew Nyes that excites you the most? And he said Fraser Minten. And Kamloops Blazers draft pick, 19 years old. I distinctly remember you saying, when I looked down this list of prospects that Nick had compiled, you said anyone that's got a 6 in their height is someone who stands out to you.
Especially a guy who plays center, too.
And he does not look like, we're not going down this tangent. We're staying with Fraser Minten, but I want to make a point. I still look at a Nick Robertson getting absolutely pushed around by, how do you say his name? Is it Harbor Jackeye or Arbor Jackeye?
I say Arbor.
Arbor Jackeye.
But I'm sure there's someone on here who just...
Well, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm an expert in the Montreal Canadiens.
No, I love... There's going to be someone in the comments who says something about it.
There's people in the comments who are just there was one guy.
There was one guy who just loves correcting us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he gets
actually
off on it.
Matthew Nyes played a couple regular season games last year. Shut up.
It's
man.
like yeah.
I don't remember him.
But he is. You are right, sir. He is right.
No.
Yeah.
Well, who cares?
Yeah, he is right. Well, no, I'm okay.
Just pretend he didn't.
If you wanna have a few corrections, but it's like, listen, we said before, if you come to this podcast because you want to hear two guys gab about the Leafs that and are just sitting here shooting the shit. We're not here providing in-depth analysis.
Honestly, my memory as I'm getting older is getting way worse.
Let's take a look.
Like I used to recall so many things and just remember everything, and over the past 2-3 years, my memory, you listen to some of these guys on the radio talk and they just remember these things. It's I can't remember them.
Google says Arbor Jackeye.
Yeah.
So there you go.
No, I don't remember it ever being.
Anyways, you see Nick Robertson still out there getting pushed around and gets just dummied by Arbor Jackeye. And with Minten, he didn't look out of place at all. He looked like he has an NHL body because he's 6'1".
Well, Pierre Engvall had a 6 in front of his name and played like he was 5'5".
He played he was Dennis Malgin.
Yeah, so it doesn't always mean something, but I think it matters for a center iceman, even if just to get body position in a spot on the ice that requires a battle like that. That matters, but. Hopefully he's not a tough guy or he's not going to hurt anyone, but in those times where you just need to get body position on somebody, he can do that.
Exactly. I think you're so right. I think the fact that they're willing to give Minten a look, and he's earned it, but is because they're just desperate. I could see a scenario where they do keep him and he plays, because I'm pretty sure it's 9 games that he can play before they burn a year on his ELC. I could see them giving him a real look in those 9 games.
Yeah, I think it's. I just think their winger depth looks a little soft without Willie on the wing. It's why would you take one of your best wingers, probably your best, the guy for he tailed off near the end, but I'd say for 80% of the season last year, he was the most dangerous guy on the ice for them. Playing a wing position. So what are we doing here? Put him back on the wing, man. You know what take I always just and I'm sorry if anyone out there had this take, but it's just I just never.
I love when you tee it up like this. It's according to Google, it's 10 games, by the way.
I never bought this at all. Was the whole they're playing him at center to showcase him for a trade? It's no, they're not, man. If a team wants to trade for William Nylander, they know exactly what they're getting.
Yeah, you're getting a scoring. A
general manager is not watching William Nylander play center and all of a sudden just gonna value him differently. It's no, you're getting a very skilled
Scoring winger.
Great puck carrier and a guy who can score.
Yes.
Like, and make skilled plays. Playing center isn't going to make some general manager who has scouting reports on this guy going back years and years all of a sudden just be like, oh, wow, I should give up one of my good players now because he plays center. Like, that never made any sense.
I have the best news that you've heard all day. There are only 2 more preseason games left.
I was literally about to say the preseason's over.
Yeah, there are only 2 more preseason games left. The preseason, I don't know if anyone else has this. I always have the same thing watching a preseason hockey game. I sit down and I'm like, okay, preseason.
Dude, that was me the other night.
Let's take it in. I'm going to watch this. And then the puck drops and you can tell that everyone, and listen, I'm all for it because the last thing you want is a key guy to get hurt in a preseason game, knock on wood. But you sit down to watch it and you're like, oh, these guys are going like 65%.
Well, yeah, I was the starting lineups in. We gotta watch it, and I just it was
a
challenging to.
It was getting a little chippy in that Habs game. It was getting a little chippy.
Dude, it was still just like I found myself kind of.
Oh, you can tell when you watch the big boys, like they are not going.
I was dozing off a bit.
Yeah, they are not going at full speed, which again, I'm all for because like don't get hurt in a preseason game. But man, yeah, I'm just about ready. They've got a back-to-back Thursday night, Saturday night against the Detroit Red Wings, and then
wait for that.
And then we'll be back here next Wednesday. You and I aren't big post-game guys, but it's become a yearly tradition where we do a post-game after the first game of the season. So we will be back next Wednesday to do a post-game. Leafs Habs from Scotiabank Arena.
How did we just do 36 minutes?
Because
what did we even talk about?
We talked about the
I don't even remember a conversation that we just had other than about Fraser Minten and William Nylander.
We talked about the perils of being a Toronto sports fan.
And maybe because I've already erased what happened in that baseball game out of my memory. So.
We killed a solid 18 minutes doing that.
Well, that just shows you what preseason hockey's all about. We're just begging for the Blue Jays to lose so we can have a good podcast conversation.
That's right. But guess what? It all starts for real next week. Getting back on the 2-a-week train. Are you ready for that too?
No, I'm not ready for that.
You're not ready for that, but you are going to be ready for that. And you're going to be ready for that by hitting the like and subscribe button below and then
spread the word, tell your friends.
That's right. Thank you so much, everybody, for your support and for all your comments. We didn't really get yerped that bad last week.
Honestly, I love the comments. I find most of the comments are very positive. I just love the guys who correct us, and I don't mind you correcting us. It's just sometimes it just makes me realize how bad my memory is. Like I just had no memory of Matthew and I playing any regular season hockey last year. I don't.
No, he came up. It was like the last few games. Do you remember like all last season? There was so much like, is he going to come up? Is he going to leave Minnesota? Is he going to he's with the Frozen Four? Is he going to come up and participate in that? And then he came up and there was so much hype around him and they were like, this kid's pretty good. And now, as you said earlier I'm watching him this preseason, you're like, no, this kid is.
No, he could be a difference maker.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. He can definitely be a difference maker.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, time will tell. We're going to watch him. Well, Ryan is definitely going to watch him in 2 more preseason games. And then we're going to watch him for real next week. Okay. We need to get out of here. Thanks so much, everybody. See you next week.